Hello guys, this is your friend. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Powerful Naruto start to reveal his true self and Sasuke bashing, part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start a new fanfic. A doorway opened into an alley, spilling light into the darkness and making the shadows seem all the darker. A boy's silhouette could be seen holding a large bag in one hand, his head turned over his shoulder. A muffled voice could be heard from inside the building, to which the boy responded. "Yeah, Mom, I'm taking it out right now. Sheesh, you'd think I've never taken out the trash before." Hefting the bag, he walked over to the nearby trash bin and tossed the bag in before returning to the safety of the building. A short way down the alley, a shadow moved towards the bin and, careful to not make too much noise, sorted through the contents. Shifting aside a few old ragged clothes and scraps of paper, he spotted something that instantly got him excited. It seemed someone was cleaning out old supplies, as there in the bin he found some scrolls and books. Just what he was looking for. After grabbing the items and stuffing them in his satchel, he did one more quick sift through before rushing off down the alley and into the night. A moment later, the same boy peeked out again from the doorway as the muffled voice from before came once again. "No, Mom, there isn't anything out there. It must have been a cat or something." Across town a bit later, a figure could be seen slinking through the streets, sticking to the shadows as much as possible. When it separated from them long enough to distinguish itself as human, it merely seemed to be a standing shadow from all the dark clothes it wore. Rushing into a nearby park, it instantly jumped into some bushes as some civilians walked by, unaware that he was only a few feet away, glaring as they passed by. After they were a comfortable distance away, soft sounds of movement were heard again as the figure moved towards the back of the park. In a section that was covered with various shrubs, it lifted a hidden doorway and slipped beneath the surface of the village. It was dark, but he knew his way by now. He had visited this place since he was very young, when he had found it completely by accident while running from a mob. After that, it became one of his greatest safe havens in the village. It was here that he would escape to when the glares became too harsh, or when certain celebrations were held that would cause him to need to flee from crowded areas when he was able to. This was also the place he kept his most precious possessions. He had found the area many years ago, and foolhardy as he was at the time, he cleaned out many items that would probably been very valuable to him in the coming years, but that was fine. He still ended up with far more than he started with. Rounding another corner, he came to a stop in front of a door. Taking a moment, he pricked his finger before swiping it over a small tile near the door. He heard a click that let him know the door was now unlocked. Upon entering, he was greeted with the all too familiar smell of old paper and the sight of numerous racks of scrolls, books, weapons and other items he had collected over the years. For now though, he took a quick look through the items he had just found and took the ones he didn't want to look through at the moment to the shelves, and after cataloging them in a thick ledger, he placed them in their respective spots. Taking a glance at the clock nearby, he realized he had little time left before sunrise. Quickly grabbing a blank scroll, he sealed up his new possessions before opening a nearby closet. In a flash of dull dark and blinding orange, he had transformed into his public mask. The stealthy, cool-headed Night Stalker now became the loudmouthed, blonde-topped Academy Doby. Grabbing a quick bite to eat, he locked the door to his secret reprieve from reality and headed back towards the exit. Letting out a sigh, he climbed back up into the twilight of early morning and crept back to his apartment to start the morning ritual that everyone was used to seeing from him. Soon he could drop this mask though. Soon he would show them all just what their ignorance could have cost them. Iruka sighed as he walked down the hall. This would be the last day for many of his students as ninja in training. Today they would take their test for advancement into the ninja ranks. Many of them were ready and had proven it on a number of occasions. One, however, worried him far more than the others. That one being Uzumaki Naruto. He had nothing against the boy, in fact he had often seen the boy go through hell in the village just to get meager scraps to repair damage to his apartment that had been done, probably by the same people he was buying the materials from. It was humbling in a way, and had there been any way to prove what was going on he would have helped the boy with his plight. However, anytime anyone tried to turn in those guilty, the civilian council would rule any evidence as inconclusive, or just make it disappear altogether. Though he didn't really find anything wrong with the boy, even though he knew what was held in him, he was always a bit unsettled around him. He had often seen the boy act more mature than most of the adults that berated him, but most of the time he was just the blonde idiot that played pranks. To Iruka, Naruto was an enigma. A puzzle that was missing far too many pieces to figure out what the real picture had been. In class, though, it was almost glaringly obvious. He was the dead last. A student who had failed twice already and was in danger of doing so again. That wasn't to say that Iruka would go easy on him in order to let him pass, but he did feel sorry for him. Nearing the door to his classroom, he was about to enter when he felt a presence behind him. Turning around quickly, he saw nothing until he looked down a bit and noticed the blonde mop of just the student he was thinking about a moment ago. Naruto, you know it's the day of the exam, don't you think you're cutting it a little close? Hehe. Iruka-sensei, I'm fine. Besides, I need to pass soon if I'm ever going to be Hokage, right? The boy grinned with his hands locked behind his head. Iruka couldn't help but snort a little. Nay, what's so funny? The boy glared at him, apparently a little angry that Iruka would laugh at his announcement. Sorry. Just thinking about how often you say that. It brings back a lot of memories. Anyhow, let's get inside. We wouldn't want to make everyone wait too long, right? With a nod, he opened the door and walked into the classroom, each going to their respective desk, though not without Iruka noticing the scowl Mizuki threw at Naruto. Quiet down, everyone. Today we are taking the graduation test to see if you are ready to become Genin Ninja of the village. When your name is called, you will come up to the front of the class and perform what we tell you. After you are deemed worthy of passing, you will be presented with one of these hit-ite to show you are now a true ninja. One by one the class was called down to prove their skills. Something seemed off though to Iruka. Mizuki seemed to go off in a daze a few times, and as such Iruka ended up going through a few more students than the other teacher. Looking down his list, he called out the name of his next student to test as he noticed Mizuki just finishing his last student. Uchiha Sasuke. The spike-haired brooder of the class made his way to the floor as almost all the female eyes were on him. Meanwhile, Mizuki was looking at his sheet as he smirked at the next name before calling it out. Uzumaki Naruto. The boldly dressed class clown made his way confidently to the front of the room before taking his place in front of the teacher. He instantly felt something wrong as he waited for his instruction. He got slightly distracted as he heard numerous squeals from behind him, signifying the Uchiha, in all his perfection, did another flawless jutsu. Scowling slightly, he barely registered that Mizuki asked him to do a bunshin. Again he felt a disturbance as he gathered his chakra and made the seal for the simple jutsu. What he planned on doing was form 3 clones of himself. What he ended up was one copy that looked like a deflated blow-up doll in an orange jumpsuit. Instantly he knew what happened. Mizuki had screwed with his chakra flow. Scowling at the man, he sighed. He knew what was coming. I'm sorry, Naruto, but if you can't do the basic jutsu, we have to fail you, Mizuki said with a huge mental smile. His plans were going just as he planned. No one would believe the demon over him. He glanced at Iruka, who was looking between Naruto and his attempted clone, and just shook his head. Laughing inside his head, he watched as Naruto slowly returned to his seat while Iruka announced when they would need to gather for team assignments and a brief speech about what it means to be a ninja of Konoha before dismissing the students so they could meet their parents and announce their results to their parents, who were no doubt waiting outside anxiously. As they made their way outside, Mizuki slipped out with them to begin the next stage of his plan. After sneaking through the Hokage Tower and running to the area Mizuki told him to meet up, Naruto knew he was ahead of schedule, so he decided to read up on what he found for a bit. Opening the scroll, he found the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. This doesn't look too tough. Well, I never learned anything just sitting around. Going over the technique, he was soon absorbed in practicing the new jutsu. He knew that this wasn't really a substitute graduation. No such thing existed in all the rule or law books he was made to read, either by choice or from a punishment. It was such an obvious lie, but that didn't matter to him. He just wanted to get back at the bastard for rigging his test and failing him. What better way than to bet him at his own game? Well, that's one down. There looks to be quite a few jutsu in here. Oh well, I'll copy down as many as I can before the tem gets here. No reason not to add a few to my personal library. With that, he whipped out a blank scroll and began the process of transferring the jutsu to the new scroll. Had he not had so much practice in doing so, this may have taken a while, but when you dig used scrolls out of garbage for an education, you learn to write fast to get the more fragrant of them copied and tossed before they could spread their scent too far. A few hours later, he heard sounds crashing through the forest and quickly wrapped the scrolls up before stowing his copy and swinging the larger, full version onto his back. What approached, though, was not what he was expecting. Naruto, what do you think you're doing taking that scroll? An irate Iruka stood at the edge of the clearing, breathing heavy and scowling at Naruto. Heh, I did it, Iruka-sensei. I learned a technique from the scroll, so I passed right. ... But where is Mizuki-sensei? He said he was going to meet me here. Did he have something else to do and sent you instead? It was the easiest way he could warn Iruka without blowing his self-made cover. He just hoped the light bulbs clicked on before the tem got there. As if on cue, Mizuki appeared on a branch overhead and started yelling about how Iruka was trying to steal the scroll and run. A brief exchange later found Iruka crouched over Naruto with a giant shuriken sticking out of his back. It took a moment for Naruto's mind to click from what he was just told. He may have been more intelligent than he let on, but to learn that there was a demon inside you wasn't something you easily believed. Suddenly the glares, the abuse, the treatment he was given in the village all these years made sense. For a second he stared up at the face of the man who just protected him, barely registering what he was saying before he shuffled out from under him and bolted into the woods with Mizuki hot on his heels. While running, he tapped some chakra into the bands around his wrists and waist to reduce his weight a bit, allowing him to put some distance between himself and the Chunin behind him. Once the man was out of sight, Naruto dropped down and hid to give himself a little time to process what he was just told. Again he was caught off guard when Mizuki and an injured Iruka dropped into the clearing right near him. He was able to hear their argument about how Mizuki said he was a demon and Iruka was defending him. He could see Iruka was in no shape to fight his peer with the wounds he sustained while protecting him. Mizuki obviously saw this too and was preparing to take out the other man as he reached for the other shuriken he had on his back. Forget worrying about demons and villagers. Right now he needed to focus. Someone was finally willing to defend him both physically and mentally. He wasn't about to let him die in cold blood. Pushing his thoughts aside, he pushed off and landed a kick to Mizuki's temple, landing between the two Chunin. Mizuki-tem, if you lay one finger on Iruka-sensei, I will break off each of your fingers and feed them to you digit by digit. Both men were taken slightly aback by the threat before Mizuki began to laugh. What do you think you could possibly do to me, demon brat? I am a Chunin while you couldn't even make genin. I will tear you apart. Then Iruka. Prepare yourself, boy, because this is the last moment of your life. Mizuki was off like a bolt of lightning, aiming to kill the boy quickly. He had to finish this and get out of here before Anbu had time to figure out where they were. Unfortunately, he realized too late how wrong he was. Right before his kunai had a chance to pierce the boy's jacket, his target simply disappeared. A little unsettled, he looked around the clearing before seeing a flash of orange in the trees above him. Mizuki-tem, for hurting a person who acknowledged me, I will invite upon you the same pain 1,000 times. Mizuki was about to retort when he saw Naruto form an unfamiliar seal. You wanted this scroll so bad, I will show you one of its secrets. Now you may know the horror of what you could have been. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. In a large puff of smoke, the clearing was filled with orange. The ground, trees, everywhere Mizuki looked, all he saw was orange. Goodbye Mizuki Tem. With that, only screams could be heard as one gray-haired Chunin was beaten within an inch of his life. Hey, I think I overdid it a little. Naruto scratched the back of his head as he made his way over to check on Iruka. Seeing the man alive and only slightly injured, he was only slightly surprised when Iruka told him to close his eyes. After doing so, he felt pressure on his head. Again Iruka spoke, telling him to open his eyes, and congratulating him on his graduation. At this point though, Naruto could care less about graduation and instead hugged Iruka for finally accepting him as a person. The sun was beginning to show itself by the time Iruka and Naruto made it to the Hokage Tower with a couple clones carrying the restrained, bruised and bloody Mizuki. Making their way to the Hokage's office and finding him already present, they entered to give their report. What met them was not just the Hokage, but also his two civilian council advisors Homura and Kaharu. As soon as the two advisors saw the orange-clad boy, they immediately stiffened and glared at him, fighting off the urge to yell at the demon. They knew all too well what would happen if they broke Sarutobi's law while the man was sitting not 5 feet from them. Trained as they were in showing no emotions, Naruto could see the hate in their eyes all too well, but it wasn't them he cared about. No, it was the old man behind the desk that he was more concerned about. After all, it was that man that he had used his perverted jutsu on to get the scroll in the first place. He could only pray the Hokage wouldn't hold that against him. Well, hello Iruka-kun, Naruto-kun. I believe you have something that belongs to me, Naruto. He held out his hand and motioned Naruto forward. The boy had the decency to look at least a little ashamed as he placed the scroll in the Hokage's arm. First off, I would like to thank you both for your part in apprehending the traitor Mizuki and protecting the secrets of our village. Naruto, I especially want to thank you for playing the fool in order to expose this threat. Naruto was taken aback a bit before he saw the man wink at him. Second, I will be granting you both a B-ranked mission success with the pay to go along with it. But Hokage-sama, the boy is not even a ninja of this village. How could he work on, let alone complete a mission, let alone a B-ranked mission? Sarutobi glanced at Homura before speaking. I see he has a Hitai-ite on his head, thus signifying him as a shinobi of this village. Isn't that correct, Iruka? Hi, Hokage-sama. While Naruto did not successfully complete the test in school, it was later found out that he had been sabotaged by Mizuki, who purposely failed him for the reason of offering him this second, graduation test. During our encounter with Mizuki in the forest, he showed he was more than capable of succeeding in his previous test in a combat environment by defeating the Chunin-level shinobi Mizuki, and as such is more than ready for his life as a shinobi. Iruka stood at attention and the three high-ranking officials could see the pride flowing off the man. Very well, then there are no problems there. Now, Naruto, I will allow you to keep the item you acquired during this event, provided you use it with caution and protect it, as it is a very precious item. It would be very bad if it fell into the hands of anyone else, even someone of this village. He sent a glance to his advisors, letting them know to not press the matter. Now Naruto, I would ask you to please leave as I have some discussions to go over with Iruka, and don't forget to go to the team assignment later. Have a nice day. Dismissed. Watching Naruto leave, he smiled as the boy nearly hopped out of the room and closed the door before running out of the building. His cheers could be heard through the closed window. Grimacing slightly, Hiruzen turned back to the remaining people in his office. Well, Iruka-kun, this presents us with a small problem. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, I don't quite follow. Adding Naruto to the roster will unbalance the numbers. As you know, we make the teams in threes, which are balanced. Well, with Naruto now passing, the numbers have been thrown off by one. Now normally we would simply put him with a team the next time around. The two advisors looked rather excited about making the boy wait longer to join the ninja ranks, as the longer he was not an official ninja the longer he was technically under their control. However, I don't believe we should have him wait any longer. He's already been kept back twice, and I am certain he is more than ready for missions. What are you suggesting, Hokage-sama? This time it was Kaharu who spoke up. Now curious as to the Hokage's plan. Though the idea of a four-man cell had been brought up a few times in the past, most notably by Senju Tsunade, the idea never gained popular favor. I believe for now that with Naruto's unique abilities, his newfound technique and his performance against the Chunin Mizuki, I am instating Naruto as a one-man cell. It was so quiet in the room that Sarutobi could have sworn he could hear the beetle that was crawling up the wall outside his window. Then all of a sudden the room was filled with noise once again. Both of the advisors said almost in unison, "What a wonderful idea, Hokage-sama." While thinking, what better way to get rid of the beast than send him out on his own? While Iruka was horrified, a lone genin on his own team. You can't really be considering this, Hokage-sama. He may have beaten Mizuki, but being sent on real missions, and who would be his sensei? When I last looked we were short-handed as is. He was my student and I cannot consent in this. To answer your question, yes, we are short on Jonin sensei, that is why he will not have one. He will be sent on missions which will be deemed capable of him to handle, or he will be placed with a team whose mission requires backup, but not so much that would merit sending a full team. The advisors were ecstatic at this news. It was like Christmas to them. Leaving the demon brat to fend completely for himself was beyond their wildest dreams. Forget holding him back for the next group of graduates. If things go well they would be rid of him within a month. Iruka on the other hand was livid. He trusted the Hokage with his loyalty, but sending a lone genin out into the life of a ninja was unheard of. Even setting that aside, the Hokage, the man hailed as the professor, was allowing a boy to go into the ninja world without even a sensei to guide him. Was he insane? Now I know what you are all thinking, and I assure you that he is more than ready for his trials ahead. Advisors, he will be a bit of a special case and will only be allowed missions that have my approval. Is that clear? After getting a hesitant confirmation that they understood what he meant, he dismissed them, but kept Iruka behind. Iruka, it may not seem like much at the moment, but I assure you that your former student is more than ready for what he will need to do. He has lived a far more difficult life than any of his classmates and as such was forced to adapt in ways that no one would imagine. You are well aware that I am able to keep my eye on certain areas when I see fit. I will let you know that Naruto is a lot more capable than he lets others believe. He far surpasses any genin, and most likely many chunin in skill and knowledge. How far he's actually come I cannot say for certain, as he occasionally go places I cannot track him or that are out of my range, but believe me when I tell you that all you have seen thus far has been a mask that has been in place for years to hide himself from his peers in order to fit in better, while continuing to advance his skill so he could survive the harsher side of Konoha's streets. Even if you say that, Hokage-sama, Naruto is like a little brother to me. I can't help but worry about him. If nothing else, let me be his sensei. I am sorry, Iruka, but only Jonin are able to be a team sensei, and you are far too valuable as a classroom sensei to be sent out in the field at the moment. We may still be strong, but we are also still recovering from the last war just like every other nation. You have proven yourself as a capable sensei for upcoming genin, so for now that is where you will have to stay. Though if it will ease your mind I will allow you to cover mission assignments when you are not busy teaching. That way you will at least be able to know where Naruto is going for missions. Sighing, Iruka knew Sarutobi was right. They just didn't have the resources to allow Naruto his own sensei, and there was no way Naruto would be safe if he were to be left in the hands of the civilian council. No, this was for the best. At least this way his missions would be controlled, and when one team lost a member in the upcoming Chunin exams he would be able to join that team. Hi Hokage-sama. If you'll excuse me, I have to begin a schedule for my next class. Bowing, he left the room, his mind still on the blonde and what his future might hold. He couldn't help but have conflicting thoughts about the boy. One side of him wanted to believe Sarutobi and believe that Naruto could overcome the seemingly insurmountable odds. The other side, however, kept flashing how many things could go wrong on a simple mission and what that would mean for a lone genin out in the field. Sighing again, he left the tower and headed home. After all, he still had a lesson planned to work on for the new class he would soon be in charge of. Despite his attachments, he couldn't risk a whole generation of students by worrying about one person, no matter how close he felt towards the boy. The Forbidden Scrolls' secrets were now spread out in front of him in fresh scrolls. Separated and categorized, he was now considering which to go over. Seeing as he already had Kage Bunshin down, he decided to delve a little deeper with them. How many uses could a more durable clone have after all? He could make them explode, use them for diversions, or setting up traps while he lead his enemies to them. He remembered from copying the jutsu to that he would learn what they learned, so his already good chakra control would jump again by leaps and bounds, not to mention training his various skills. Yes, Kage Bunshin was definitely the right thing to learn first. The only drawback to the jutsu was that people with low chakra would be in danger if they created too many and spread their chakra too thin, but for someone like him with unnaturally high chakra reserves, it was perfect. Once again storing the scrolls he wasn't going to need at the moment, he stored what he would need in a scroll and grabbed a stocked supplies pouch and holster from a shelf. Heading to one of his closets, he picked out an outfit for the following day when he would go to the team selection at the academy. It was finally time for him to drop his mask a bit, and what a surprise they all would be in for. Dark green cargo pants with a black skin-tight shirt. Fingerless gloves and black ninja sandals. Then, to finish the look, covered shin and forearm guards and a ninja too. Yes, they would definitely be surprised. Making one last check to make sure he wasn't forgetting anything, he threw his chosen gear in a satchel before closing and sealing the door and heading out to his favorite ramen stand to grab some food. After that, he would go to his apartment, in which the ignorant villagers assumed he lived, for a good night's sleep to prepare for the fun that was sure to start tomorrow. Thinking back on all he's shown to everyone of his skill and intelligence so far, he couldn't help but chuckle, causing some passing villagers to glare a little harder at him. He didn't care though. He wasn't here for them. Protecting them didn't matter to him one bit if they weren't willing to believe in him. After finding out just why they hated him, he didn't really blame them too much. The demon he carried did kill their families and destroy their lives, not to mention taking the life of their hero. Even so, couldn't they at least see past that? He wasn't the QB, so why should they hate him? It wasn't like he was the one that went on a murderous rampage, so why did he deserve the abuse? Shaking his head, he concentrated on happier thoughts, once again going to finally casting a portion of his mask aside and showing what he could really do. Arriving at Ichiraku's, he sat down and ordered his usual miso ramen before starting a list of things to take care of tomorrow after the real him came out. Putting the emo Uchiha in his place and dropping his fake affection for the pink-haired banshee were near the top of his list. Not to mention putting the dog breath in his place. The most important though out of everything was going to be returning a certain pale-eyed girl's affections. He had wanted to do it for so long, and she was well worth it from his view, but he never did understand just what she saw in him, the scourge of Konoha. She was after all an heir to a clan, by all rights she should be able to get anyone she wanted, but she chose him. Now it was time for him to show that she chose well. The only problems he knew would arise were from two sources. The first being her clan, especially her father. Again, she was the heir, so would he be seen as unworthy? The second was the aforementioned mutt who had an obvious attraction to her. Like most males in his clan, he had already tried numerous times to claim her as his. Unfortunately for him, she was completely disinterested in his advances and always escorted around by branch members to and from the academy. Well, all that could wait until tomorrow. With a slurp, he finished his last bowl of ramen for the night before paying and heading off to his apartment. Sleep would come easy tonight since the action with Mizuki the previous night had kept him from his bed. Not that he really needed to sleep every night. That was another thing that became clearer once he found out from Mizuki about his tenant. He knew he had certain traits that were more advanced than a normal human, and some even more advanced than most ninja, short of having specific bloodlines. His hearing, eyesight, sense of smell and reaction time were better than an Inuzuka's. His regeneration left the doctors in baffled awe. Then there was his stamina and recuperation, which was borderline freakish even for a ninja. Even his speed and muscle density was different than most. But like every other one of his skills, he didn't showcase anything. As far as his classmates and most of the village knew, he was just a normal human, if not subpar, or, in most of the older generation's eyes, a reincarnation of the Kyuubi. Making it to his apartment, he decided to leave the rest of his thoughts until tomorrow and get some decent rest. He wanted to be ready just in case his team got a mission right away. He didn't want a lapse in judgment to cause any mishaps when he was supposed to be proving his true worth. After entering his place, he relocked the door and looked around just to make sure there weren't any surprises from villagers or ignorant ninja laying around anywhere. He learned long ago that he shouldn't move around too much without making sure everything was in order before doing so. Many painful experiences taught him that, but then at the same time he was a little glad they had happened. Aside from the whole unbearable pain thing he got from it, he also got quite a few sets of quality kunai, shuriken, explosive tags and other assorted weapons. Heck, his ninja that he currently had stored with his gear for tomorrow was once set up to behead him when he laid down. That was one that he was happy to find, and glad that whoever set it up didn't pay too much attention to making the trap hidden. All it took was for him to trip the wire and slice. He had a brand new ninja to embedded in the rod he tripped the trap with. Double checking the bed, he got undressed from his kill me orange attire for hopefully the last time and hopped under the covers. His last thoughts before he drifted off were of his pale-eyed princess and the possible future they might have once he gains a little of the respect that has been overdue for him. Oh, wouldn't they be surprised? Eyelids now too heavy in the comfort of his mattress, he drifted off to a peaceful sleep. One of the few he's ever had. Deep within the bowels of the Hokage mountain sat a man behind a desk, his body half hidden by the bandages he wore. This man was Danzo, calm, cool and calculating. With him sat two others who, to him, were mere shadows of what they had once been, but even with their lax behavior he could see that there was a storm brewing behind each of their eyes. So what brings the esteemed advisors to my chambers? Surely there is nothing that one so lowly such as I could have that you need. His voice dripped with sarcasm. After all, these two were a key part in his plan to take over the rule of Konoha, and at some point the whole of Hai no Kuni and beyond. We have come from a meeting with the Hokage and thought it should be brought to your attention that the demon brat graduated yesterday after showing himself capable by defeating the traitor Mizuki and returning the forbidden scroll for the Hokage. Danzo's eyebrow twitched slightly in a rare moment of emotion. His chances at getting his hands on a particularly powerful weapon had just slipped away. However, there is a small ray of hope that comes from this. The Hokage saw fit to place the boy on his own team. Without a sensei, we must not waste this opportunity. Though we cannot give him missions ourselves, we can still manipulate the system enough to get him placed on certain choice missions where the risk is higher than it seems. Since we can no longer get him into your root program in order to control him, we have only the option of extermination. This must be carefully planned, Danzo. This absolutely cannot come back on us or it would cost us dearly. Danzo just sat and stared at the two former ninja through the entire explanation and for a short time afterward. The two advisors sat and watched him as he went into some deep thought. Well, we have more genin teams than usual, so it shouldn't be too difficult to delay him from getting a mission until all of the D-rank missions are gone. Nor would it be too difficult to assign him to assist a team on a slightly higher risk mission and add in some of my own men to make sure everything goes smoothly. Indeed, if we cannot control this weapon, then it will be of no use to us in the future. We shall take the necessary steps to ensure that the demon does not fall into the wrong hands for the good of Konoha. Nodding in agreement, the advisors delved into possible situations that they would be able to enact their plans. All three agreed that the best method would be to get the boy sent on a mission that had a high potential of raising in difficulty. It would only be a matter of time before one such case came to light. When it did, they would be ready, and then they would be free from the beast once and for all. Danzo, of course, was slightly disheartened at the loss of a possible powerful tool, but he would rather the boy die than be a weapon that could be used against him. That didn't mean he wouldn't try though, but if reports were accurate, the boy was unflinchingly loyal to his opponent, and a demon aiding a cage in any fight would not end well. Yes, it was best to wait for just the right moment to strike. As he droned out the two gabbing advisors, he proceeded to plan for any possibility. In almost every situation he came up with, he was very happy with the imagined results. An evil smile was growing on his face as he dismissed the advisors in order to give him ample room and concentration to begin planning. I wasn't going to update this soon, but since there are some questions, and people are itching to see a fight, I decided Chapter 2 would come out a bit faster. I did a pretty quick proofread on this one, so if you see any major mistakes, let me know please. On to the show. Naruto awoke well before his alarm, excited as today marked his first real day as a ninja. Finally, he would have a sensei that would teach him how to further his skills. Getting out of bed, he switched off his alarm so it wouldn't ring after he left. He may have no one that would willingly live near him, but that didn't mean he wanted to chance waking someone up. All it would take would be for someone to pass his door and hear the alarm going off to claim he was disturbing the peace and earn him more abuse. Grabbing his gear that he would use for the day, he took a quick shower before dressing in his new equipment and heading to his kitchen for a bowl of cereal. Once that was finished, he grabbed his ninja 2, slipped out of his apartment, locking the door behind him, and jogged off towards his hideaway. He hadn't planned on getting up so early, but he wasn't about to squander the extra time he now had. Slipping into the tunnel that led to his lair, he was soon staring at the all too familiar racks. Crossing his fingers, he created a few cage bunshin and instructed them on what scrolls or books he wanted them to go over, or in a couple clones' cases, what weapons to train with. After all, muscle memory was a mental task, so it should figure in that he could improve his accuracy and reaction time with this method as well. The only things they couldn't give him was physical enhancements and directly increasing his chakra capacity, but control, accuracy, knowledge and reaction should all be well within his grasp. Nodding his approval, he made his way back out into the streets of the village, which by now were slowly filling. The glares wouldn't keep him from his destination today though, but he did notice with the glares that he was getting some other looks as well. If his attire was different enough to cause the villagers to pause in their glaring, he could only imagine what it will do to his classmates. As he walked, he went over all the people in his class that graduated. One by one he named them off in his head and weighed their strengths and weaknesses. It wasn't until he was almost done that he realized there would be an odd man out. With this realization came some worry that someone would be made to wait for an opening, and that the odd man out would be him. He didn't know who made up the teams, but he couldn't shake the foreboding feeling that the someone who did was going to try to screw up his future. Well, there was no point in worrying about something he couldn't change, so instead he opted to head to the academy even though it was still a bit early. With any luck, someone would be there to greet him or at least stave off his boredom while they waited. In the Hokage office, Sarutobi was considering his gathered Jonin sensei. Well, all but one, as Kakashi still hadn't shown his face yet, as usual. Sarutobi knew better than to wait. He knew where the man was, but couldn't understand his need to mourn his fallen friends and sensei so much. Honestly, it had been more than a few years, he should move on. Well, he would address that once again when the man showed his masked face later. Meanwhile, he would let the gathered Jonin know their new assignments. Now you all know why you are here, it is time for the Genin team assignments. Some of you have had teams before, others have not. I will leave it to you to train these Genin as a show of my trust in your abilities. Try your best to make them into true Konoha ninja. A chorus of "Hi" resounded through the room from all Jonin present. For those of you that have already looked at the graduating class, you may have already made your assumptions about the teams. I will tell you now that we had a late graduate and the numbers were thrown off a bit. My prior arrangements, however, are staying mostly the same. Team 1 will be. Sarutobi continued to name off the teams as their sensei wrote down the names given so they could familiarize themselves with who they were going to teach. Quote. Team 7, Hitaki Kakashi, Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke, Inuzuka Kiba. Team 8, Yuhi Kurenai, Hyuga Hinata, Aburame Shino, Magami Harume. Team 9 is still full. Team 10 Sarutobi Asuma, Nara Shikamaru, Yamanaka Ino, Akamichi Choji. Team 11 Uzumaki Naruto. All of the Jonin looked at the Hokage shocked. Nay, Hokage-sama, isn't Uzumaki still a Genin? Yes, Kurenai he is. Then how can you make him a sensei? What makes you think I made him a sensei? Kurenai studied the man, trying to think of how he wouldn't be considered a sensei. Following the pattern for every other team, by naming Naruto first, that was declaring him a sensei. Hokage-sama, I assumed that since you named him first. You should know better by now than to assume. If we lived off assumptions, we would have all been dead a long time ago. In a sense, yes, he is a sensei, but not of a team. Had you allowed me to finish, you would understand. I have discussed this with the boys' teacher Yumino Iruka and my advisors. Since our numbers are off by 1, we have decided that Naruto will be a team unto himself. Therefore he will be both sensei and student in a one-man cell. He will be allowed missions that I deem he is capable of, and be allowed to join in on missions that may need just a little extra assistance, but not a full team for backup. At first the Jonin were shocked, but once the information got digested they could see the benefits of such an arrangement, though opinions of just what that usefulness entailed differed a bit between all those gathered. Now you know your teams, be ready to pick them up around noon today so you may get to know them, and if you have time, test them. Dismissed. The gathering soon dispersed until the door closed, signaling the final person leaving. Kakashi, you can come in now. A shadow shot through the window and landed nonchalantly in front of the desk. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt the meeting with my late arrival. Cut the chit-chat, Kakashi. I know your teammates and sensei meant a lot to you, but it's time to move on. I want you to start being on time for meetings, especially with this year's team. You have the last Uchiha and I expect you to train him and help him if he develops his Sharingan. Do not neglect your other students though. After all, a team is nothing without all of its members. Sarutobi locked his eyes on the gray-haired man in front of him. Hi Hokage-sama, but what about Uzumaki? Your speech doesn't seem to fit all situations. Kakashi grinned at catching the Hokage's slip. At least until the older man laughed. You misinterpreted my meaning, Kakashi. As I said, a team is nothing without its members. Since Naruto can create all the members he wants on the fly, he carries his team everywhere he goes. Had you been here on time, you also would have found out my plans on how to handle this, but since you chose to wait until the last minute and apparently only listened to part of the explanation, you'll just have to find that out yourself. You have Team 7. Be at the school at noon, and don't be late. When Naruto first walked into the classroom, he was initially surprised to see that most of the class was already there. Hey, they must have been as excited as me to be assigned to a team. Ah, good, Hinata is here already. That makes things a bit easier. Plenty of time for us to get acquainted, or at least for her to recover from fainting. Walking across the room towards the girl, he was stopped halfway by a hand grabbing his wrist. Looking down, he found himself staring into the slitted eyes of an Inuzuka. Kiba. What the hell are you doing here, loser? This is only for people that graduated, not failures like you. Kiba bared his fangs as a low growl escaped his mouth. Check the forehead, moron. I did graduate. Now I suggest you let go before you regret what you are starting. Naruto narrowed his eyes and released a little killing intent at the dog user, catching him off guard. Recovering quickly, Kiba already had a retort spilling from his mouth. Ha! Like Adobe, like you could do anything to anyone from a clan like mine. I'd tell you to go crying home to you parents, but that would only work if you had some. They probably died by falling on their own kunai, assuming they were even ninja. Kiba was about to laugh until he felt a new wave of killing intent wash over him. This one much stronger than the last. Naruto could stand many things. He handled beatings, he dealt with verbal abuse of himself, he let the raised prices that he had to pay for nearly everything in the village slide. The one thing he would not stand for though was people badmouthing his parents. Sure, no one may know who they were, but that didn't mean he'd stand for someone belittling them. He had an image of his parents and how they would have lived. For someone to try to stomp that into the ground, that was something he would not let slide. Grabbing the boy's hand, he jerked it free from his wrist before grabbing it and twisting, causing the boy to cry out in pain. Listen well, mutt. I may not know who my parents were, but neither does anyone else here. Even so, I will not let you sling words about so easily and thrash my image of them into the dirt. If you do so again, you will be off mission duty before you can even start. With another small tug, he caused Kiba to yelp in pain before letting go. Ignoring the glare that was boring into his back as he continued walking. He did notice a few of the looks he was getting, and from some of the blushes that a few of the girls were trying to push down, he could tell his choice of attire was having a good effect. On the other side of the room alone, Uchiha was seething at the look the blonde pulled off so well, and the reactions he was seeing. Attention was being pulled away from him, and that didn't sit well with the Avenger. He was an Uchiha, the elite of the elite. How dare someone try to steal his spotlight? Standing, he made his way over to the blonde moron. Stop, Dobi. Naruto kept walking, now starting up the steps on the far side of the room towards his target. Not one to be ignored, Sasuke rushed up behind the blonde and forcefully stopped him with a hand gripping his shoulder. I told you to stop, Dobi. You will listen to me when I tell you to do something. Uchiha, I would suggest you remove your hand before it finds itself taking a vacation from the rest of your body. Sasuke, like Kiba, was taken aback for a moment by the sheer coldness in his voice before anger flooded his thoughts. How dare you threaten me? Have you forgotten who I am? I am the rookie of year in this class, and as such, along with being an Uchiha, you should respect me as I am your superior. The only thing you are superior to me in is your arrogance and ego. Now remove your hand or I will do it for you. Naruto grabbed a couple of Sasuke's fingers and began to bend them backwards slowly to drive his point home. By the wincing of Sasuke's eyes, he could tell it was having the desired effect, until Naruto Baka. Let Sasuke-kun alone. The dynamic duo enters the scene. The pink-haired banshee and her blonde sidekick, the class. How dare you lay your filthy fingers on him? You don't deserve to lick the bottoms of his shoes. Wow. Even for Sakura, that was a bit harsh. Sakura knew Naruto would be crushed by such an outburst. She knew it so well that when Naruto fixed his gaze on her, she was caught so off guard that she didn't even realize that she was backing away along with Ino. Sakura-san, I would suggest you keep your voice down. Otherwise you will make your precious Sasuke-kun deaf along with half the village. Sasuke, you really should keep your whores in line. Otherwise they might get hurt before you can revive your clan with little shrieking emos. The class wasn't sure whether to laugh, applaud or be angry. Sasuke, being the Avenger he is, of course chose the latter and forcefully turned Naruto around. Reacting faster than they all knew he could, Naruto drew his ninjutsu and had it placed at Sasuke's neck before the boy knew the sword had even been unsheathed. And you, should sit back down like a good boy and brood like you normally do. The Uchiha will not make a comeback without anyone to fill a family dossier. Sasuke was at least smart enough to realize the danger he was in with a blade to his throat. Finally he released his hold on Naruto's shoulder. Good boy. Now run along, I have better things to do than play with you. Making a shooing motion as he turned around and sheathed his blade, Naruto continued up the stairs while Sasuke made his way back to his seat to resume his brooding while glaring at the blonde, or at least as much as he could, with the two bimbos arguing over him in his ear over what he would have done to the dobe if he hadn't been caught off guard. Naruto finally made it to his destination. To the girl whose eyes hadn't left him since he entered the room. He could see her blush after his confrontation with Kiba, and it seemed to have deepened after he most recent one with Sasuke and the bimbos. Taking the seat next to her, he caught Kiba eyeing him from the front of the room with a scowl on his face. Shoving that to the back of his mind, he again turned his focus to the girl next to him. Hey Hinata-chan, what's up? The girl let out a slight eep at his question. Her crush was actually sitting next to her and actually talking to her. She couldn't believe her luck lately. First, graduating from the academy, and now the boy she dreamed about for so long was acknowledging her. Nah, Naruto-kun, I'm fine. She finally managed to get out. It sounded weak and pathetic to her, but he didn't seem to mind at all. In fact, he was smiling at her a little different than he normally smiled at anything. That's good to hear. Hey, I was wondering, later tonight after our team meetings, do you want to meet me for something to eat? There it was, the telltale, slow rising, deep crimson blush that rose from her neck to her forehead before he had to catch her to keep her from falling to the floor as she fainted. He propped her up in her seat just in time to block a fist that was aimed for the side of his head. Without looking, he addressed his assaulter. What do you want now, mutt? You stay away from Hinata, she isn't yours. The irate boy shouted. Really? Tell me, how many times has she asked you out? None. Okay, how many times has she agreed to go out with you when you asked her? Nothing again, huh? Well, it would seem to me then that she doesn't belong to you either. Not that she would, even if she did agree to go out with you. Naruto added a bit of pressure to the captured fist, listening as bones popped slightly out of place. Remember this well, Inuzuka, because it could be invaluable later in your life. Women, no, people are not possessions. People are free and have free will. If I ever see you trying to force someone to do something, especially if that person is precious to me, I will be sending your remains to your clan in separate boxes. Do I make myself clear? A few more bones popping and a little killing intent forced the Inuzuka to nod his head before Naruto released him, and like Sasuke, shooed him away. Turning back to his charge, he was pleased to see Hinata was coming around. Welcome back, Hinata-chan. Did you have a nice dream? Hinata in her sleepy daze answered without realizing it. Hi, I dreamed that Naruto-kun asked me to dinner. What a wonderful dream, but it stopped before I could accept. Slowly opening her eyes, they got wider and wider as she realized what she had just said and who she had said it to. She was instantly red again and dangerously close to fainting. Head turned, fingers poking together and biting her lower lip, she hoped that her revelation wouldn't make him go away. She prayed that he would stay near, and hoped beyond hope that maybe, just maybe, he would get a little closer. Hey, Hinata, that wasn't a dream, but if that is your answer, then I'll meet you at Ichiraku's around 6, okay? Hinata's head snapped around as she stared wide-eyed before nodding dumbly at the boy next to her, expecting to wake up any minute. Before she could respond, though, the door to the classroom opened and the remainder of the class walked in, along with Iruka, who walked behind his desk before looking over the gathered former students, taking note of Naruto's development as displayed through his clothing. Huh, he got rid of the orange, maybe he's finally taking this seriously. Okay everyone, listen up. I am going to call out your teams and I would like you to sit according to them after I am finished. Team 1. Like the Hokage the day before, Iruka went through the list, naming off each group and noting the reactions. Sakura, of course, was thrilled to be on the same team as Sasuke, though slightly disgruntled that Kiba would be there too. At least she could handle him better than Naruto. Hinata, Shino and Harume were mostly indifferent, though Hinata's head drooped a bit since Naruto wouldn't be on her team. Shikamaru was asleep and Choji sat eating a bag of chips while Ino ranted about having to be on their team. Then he got to the last team, but despite what the Hokage told him, he wanted to make sure the decision was okay with Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto, would you follow me for a moment? Naruto was confused a bit but followed the Chunin out the door, stopping only once to glare at Kiba when he heard the dog boy call out to the rest of the class. Ha, I knew he didn't really pass. Clenching his fists, he stepped outside the door as Iruka pushed it shut. Naruto, I'm not supposed to do this, but I think it is only fair. As you probably realized, you are the odd man out. This doesn't usually happen, but when it does, we usually hold the extra person until the next set of graduates. We cannot add you to a current team as that would unbalance the whole system we use dealing with 3-person cells. So basically, I'm going to have to wait until the next class is out before I can go on missions even though I graduated. Naruto said through clenched teeth. Iruka could only sigh. He knew he had to tell the boy the Hokage's plans, but that didn't mean he liked the idea. Naruto, the Hokage decided to give you a unique chance. This has never been done before, so let me explain everything before you make a decision. Receiving a nod, he continued. The Hokage has decided to make you a team in and of itself. That means you will have no teammates, but also because of the low number of active Jonin sensei, you will not have a sensei either. Any missions you do will be approved as fitting for your situation based on what the Hokage believes you are capable of. You will also be able to go with a team as backup on a difficult mission should he decide such a thing would be beneficial. Naruto, I can't stress how unique this situation is and that it is completely untested. I am offering you a chance to back out and wait for a full team with a sensei. He watched as emotions played across the blonde's face, making him unreadable in the situation. After a few minutes to consider his options, Naruto looked up at Iruka and gave off his biggest smile. Sensei, I have only one favor to ask. Announce it to the class that I accept this privilege, but on one condition. I don't want an assigned sensei, ever. If someone comes along and wants to teach me something, then so be it, but aside from that, I don't want anyone forced into that position. It would only be detrimental to the system. Iruka could tell by the mischief in the boy's eyes that he would not be swayed on the matter. So, resigning himself to his fate, he nodded before re-entering the room. The students looked on in confusion as Naruto made his way back up to where Hinata was and leaned on the wall behind her, as his previous seat was now occupied by one of her new teammates. Looking through the class, Iruka suddenly got rather nervous at what he was about to do. The Hokage was making him place a new marker in history with this simple action. Never before had there been a one-man ninja cell, and especially not one without a sensei. Sighing again, he addressed the class. For those of you that are wondering, Naruto has indeed graduated, but in doing so he has thrown off the numbers a bit. Normally we would hold the odd man out back to wait for a full team, but the Hokage has decided to offer Naruto a unique privilege. One that he has already agreed to. Naruto is now formally Team 11 and will have no Jonin sensei. He waited as the information registered through the room. Shock, awe, humor and rage were all present. It was Uchiha Sasuke that was the first to recover though. How come the Dobi gets such an offer and not an Uchiha? He'll get himself killed walking out of the mission hall. Naruto just shook his head while Ino supported Sasuke's reasoning. Sakura did not support it though, as she wanted to stay on his team. Kiba followed Sasuke's lead next. He probably got put by himself because Hokage-sama knew that no one would want to group with the loser. Some people openly laughed at that, but Naruto just let the insults roll over him as he leaned against the wall, not really caring what anyone said. That is enough, Iruka shouted in response to their remarks. I will not have anyone talking down to their allies, and since he may at some point be assigned to work with you, you should show some respect since he may save your life one day. the Dobie couldn't save a cat from drowning in a dried-up well. Another round of laughter and Iruka was irate. Uchiha Sasuke, as your superior you will listen to me when I tell you to remain silent. PFT, you are not my superior. I am the last Uchiha, and as such you should show your respect and listen to what I say. Before Iruka could move to scold the boy, there was a brief breeze and a glint of light before Sasuke once again felt cold steel pressing against his throat. Iruka, having not seen the previous actions by Naruto, was shocked at the raw speed he moved with. "Oh Sasuke-chan," Naruto said in a sing-song voice. "I would suggest you apologize to Iruka-sensei, as you have yet to actually be accepted by your Jonin-sensei. He still has the right to send you back to the academy until you are picked up by Kakashi-san. Dobie, you probably aren't even holding the right edge of the blade to my neck and yet you dare to threaten me. And Uchiha, just wait until I gain my Sharingan and I will show you just how fragile you really are." "Ah, but you don't have your Sharingan yet, Uchiha-chan, and there is no guarantee that you ever will. For all we know, you could simply only be worthy of passing on your genes to a new generation while the rest of us lowly citizens take care of all the hard work." Then leaning in so only Sasuke could hear, he added in, "Besides, you don't want to risk dying before you can kill him, do you?" That did it for Sasuke. Swinging a kunai out, he pushed the sword away from his throat as he sidestepped to get around Naruto's defenses. Stabbing out with the same kunai, he stabbed it into Naruto's chest, causing the boy to fall backwards to the ground, spinning slightly as he did so and landing face down. His nearby classmates were leaning back horrified at his actions while Sasuke stood above the blonde breathing slightly heavily. Shaking his shock off, Iruka rushed over to check the boy's vitals while Sasuke began to smirk. I told you you were worthless. I just didn't know you were that bad." Clap. 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 Everyone's head turned at the sound of hand meeting hand, only to be met with a blank wall. "Not bad, Sasuke-chan, but not good either." A form melded out of the wall before taking the shape of Naruto, who was staring at the Uchiha with his hands still together from his last clap. "Maybe next time you will be good enough to tell if it is really me attacking you." As he said that, the Naruto on the floor burst into smoke. "A bunchin." Iruka looked shocked at first, then smiled, then frowned as he turned to Sasuke. "Uchiha Sasuke, you attacked and attempted to murder a fellow Leaf Shinobi. I was only trying to scare him. How could I know that his reaction time that bad that he couldn't dodge such a slow strike? Regardless, you attacked him. As such, this will be brought up to the council to decide a fitting punishment." Sasuke just smirked. He knew that the council would do nothing more than giving him a slap on the wrist, if that. Before he could retort though, Naruto cut him off. "Don't worry about it, Iruka-sensei, it was only a bunchin after all, and a low-powered one at that. See, the Dobie knows his. Besides, it's not like Sasuke-chan can hurt me anyway. At least not with that pathetically slow movement. Now since I don't have a sensei to wait for, I'll thank you for excusing me." With that, he walked to the door and left the classroom. Turning to glare at the Uchiha once more, despite his astonishment at how Naruto just waved off the situation, Iruka gave him one last warning. "Naruto is a bit of a special case. Had you done that to anyone else here, they would have died and their blood would have been on your hands. This is the only warning I will give you. Do not even think of attacking a Konoha ninja again." Turning around and sitting at his desk once more, Iruka addressed the class. "Before I leave, I would just like to let everyone know that it has been a pleasure to know the majority of you during this class, and I wish you all a safe and productive ninja career." With that, he left them with a shunshin. In the classroom, silence reigned as everyone took in everything they had seen and heard that day. It was this silence that welcomed the first of the Jonin as they entered the room. "Team 8. Follow me please. Team 10. Let's go." As people started to leave with their sensei, Kiba made one more attempt at Hinata on her way out with a slap to her. However, his hand never made it to its target as a small cloud of bugs blocked its path. Looking up, he found the glasses of the ever-stoic Shino facing him. I would suggest that you leave her be Kiba-san. She does not wish for you advances, and angering Naruto-san is inadvisable. Kiba could only stare in shock at the boy as he'd always thought Shino was mute. As Shino caught up with his team, Hinata turned his way. Thank you, Shino-san. Do not worry about it. I merely did not wish to see Kiba-san endanger his life while Naruto-san was near. Startled, Hinata took a last glance through the room only to catch a glimpse of a blur out the window. She could only assume it was Naruto, and sent him a silent thanks for looking out for her. A click of the hand hitting the knob of the door was all the warning the Hokage got as Naruto barreled into the office. Hey Oji-san, what's the deal with putting me alone, huh? I mean, you didn't even give me a sensei. Ah, Naruto-kun, I'm happy to see you. I knew you would be by soon for this discussion. Well, to answer you I need to ask you a question myself, and I expect a straight answer. Suddenly the man behind the desk was not the cheerful Hokage, but the deadly serious leader of a ninja village. Who trained you and how powerful are you? Naruto scratched the back of his head and smiled, showing no reaction to Sarutobi's personality change, nor the killing intent that was aimed at him. Hey, I don't know what you mean, but I'll try to answer as best I can. No one trained me, and I'm more powerful than I let show in the academy. I can't tell you exactly how powerful I am, because I honestly don't know, since I don't really have anything to gauge myself against, at least not without revealing my strengths. Okay, then how about this question? Why did you hide your strength in the academy? Now it was Naruto's turn to get serious. Well, I really didn't want to draw attention to myself. You already know about the abuse I have had on me since I was little. What do you think they would have done if they knew the demon child of Konoha had any kind of power at his disposal? Now that I know what is in me, I am proud of my decision even more. People would probably have thought it was the demon getting stronger and they would have done away with me long ago. Now that I'm a shinobi though, they can't touch me. The old man could see the wisdom in his words and couldn't help but agree with Naruto. He had thought he knew the boy, but with recent events it seemed more questions were opening with every new answer he got. Well then, where did your knowledge come from? You obviously know a lot more than a normal academy student should. Add to that the fact that you took out a Chunin, even if it was with a forbidden technique, and I can't help but think that you are keeping out more than you are telling me. The skills you have shown are not something that one just picks up. Naruto couldn't help but laugh at that, making the Hokage rather confused. Actually, Oji-san, that is exactly what happened. Since I was young, starting in my orphanage years, I have been neglected. Since I was never given enough food to really live off of, and never given new clothes or other necessities, I decided to take it into my own hands and began to rummage through trash to see what I could find. Often I would find discarded weapons and scrolls which I would stash in different places around the village for safekeeping. I knew not to keep them in the orphanage since someone would just confiscated them claiming I stole them. Once I was thrown out though, it became even more of a necessity to fend for myself. I was able to sell some of the items I found and buy food, though I knew the prices were shifted. I didn't care though. At least I was alive. While I was running from a group of villagers one night, I stumbled upon a hidden place. It was well hidden and rather spacious considering its location. After cleaning it out of all the stuff that would be worthless to me, I began collecting my stashes and storing them there. It wasn't long after that, only a year or two, when I learned to read and later given my apartment. Once I was able to do that, I began to study everything I had collected. Learning about chakra control was the hardest, but I got it down and kept practicing until I was good at it. It was while I was reading one of the books I collected, an old history of Konoha book, that I learned about the Yodime and what he did. He became my idol and I decided to become a ninja. Once I decided that, I poured myself into my collection and resumed my rummaging to find anything I could. After a while I started testing myself. I would watch other ninja train to get an idea of what to do when I got stuck, but other than that it was mostly reading and practicing on my own. I did pranks around the village to see my limitations. When I found out what they were, I would train more to surpass them. The only problem I had at that time was getting the materials for my pranks, but that was solved with some trips to a few select training grounds, and some rather ambitious villagers. I would gather forgotten weapons and scrolls from training grounds or study the way the ninja trained, taking notes to review later. I was able to get most of the tools for my pranks from traps though. It seems certain people decided they should conduct a small crusade against me by rigging my apartment with traps. By that point though, I had been pranking so much that I was able to figure out how the traps worked and dismantle them. I again took notes and worked the traps into my pranks, though on a less lethal scale. The ninja I carry was from one rather elaborate trap, and is one of my more prized possessions. The rest was rather fun getting. Ever notice how there aren't many weapons and supplies left behind in Training Ground 44 after previous Chunin exams? That's right. Nothing got wasted. A huge smile creased his face as he finished. The Hokage was at first shocked, then angry. Are you insane? Do you know how dangerous that forest is? You could have been killed from any number of things. Oh, calm down, Gigi-san. I'm still here. Besides, I like that forest. Since no one ever goes there, it's kind of peaceful. A great place for jutsu scrolls and other supplies too, I might add. As far as danger goes, it's proven less lethal than the village, at least for me. The Sandame couldn't believe it. Here was a freshly graduated genin telling him that the forest of death was peaceful, and that he had people break in and set traps in his apartment to try and at least harm him if not kill him. Yet, he seemed completely unfazed by all of it. Even Itachi, the prodigal Uchiha, didn't like going into that forest alone when he started in Anbu, and yet here is a boy without even a team or sensei telling him that he basically went there to see what he could collect after Chunin hopefuls had been through the area. Speaking of which, Naruto, if you collected items after the Chunin exams, have you seen dead people in there as well? Well, sure I have. It would be kind of hard to get weapons off of live people. Didn't it bother you at all? I mean, I have seen many such exams and some of them can get rather messy. Sure, I was bothered by it at first, but then my survival side kicked in and I figured, hey, they're dead, so it would be a waste to just let stuff rot and rust out there when it was perfectly good to use. Again, he couldn't believe the simplicity of Naruto's thought process, and yet he could see behind it a massive intelligence. He had never heard of any ninja before even attempting to train themselves with no help. Heck, he didn't even know it was possible to figure out how to control chakra without aid. He couldn't help but wonder with a little regret at just how far Naruto would have gotten had he had guidance. He was brought out of his thoughts as he registered someone speaking to him. Sorry, what was that, Naruto? I said, when am I starting missions? Since I don't have a sensei, I can't really wait to be ordered to do something right. Right. Well, since it is team selection day and missions won't be handed out to most teams until after they are tested, which means about 2 days. I will leave that up to you. Tested? Tested for what? We're already genin. That is true, but that was only to see if you were mentally capable of being genin. The real test will be held tomorrow morning and focuses on the true aspects of what it means to be in a ninja cell. You mean like teamwork and safety, right? Sarutobi smiled, overjoyed that Naruto had found out the secret behind the test without even having a description of the test. Yes, Naruto, and you have just proven that you are indeed capable of becoming a genin. There are those that believe they are better than others, or those that believe that they don't need help to achieve their goals. They will not work well in a cell, and since we operate, with one exception, in cells, they would not work well in this environment and will be sent back to the academy repeatedly until they realize that. I see. It only makes sense. I mean, if you don't watch your teammates back, why should they watch yours, right? At that point, everyone is just fighting for themselves, and a battle would quickly become a massacre if the opposing side works together. With every word he spoke, Sarutobi Hiruzen grew more and more proud of the boy in front of him. If only all of the students came out with his outlook, but that would be a fairy tale wish, he knew. Very good, Naruto. You are proving yourself the better of many of your peers already. So, getting back to your question, I believe you can start missions as soon as you're ready. Well then I'll start now if you'll let me. If that is what you want, you can head down to the mission hall and hand them this scroll. They will know what to give you after they've read through it. Thank you Oji-san. I'll make you proud. Bowing, Naruto left the old man to his work. You already have, Naruto-kun. You already have. Sighing, he dove back into his paperwork, thoughts straying every now and then to the boy that had come and the man that had left. Already he was well on his way to his dream, if that was still his dream. He could no longer be sure of anything about the boy save one bit: the boy would be great. Down in the mission room, Naruto walked in to see a bored Chunin sitting behind a table laden with scrolls and documents. All official missions for Konoha and separated by rank. Walking up to the table, he handed the scroll to the Chunin who, without looking up, grabbed the scroll and read it. Almost mechanically he grabbed a mission scroll from the D-rank pile and tossed it to the boy in front of him. Naruto grabbed the scroll out of the air and headed out the door. There had been zero conversation between the two, but it didn't matter to Naruto. He had his first official mission now, and it was to find Tora, the fire daimyo's wife's cat. It escaped and was last seen in the woods near Training Ground 3. Well, no time to lose. Mission scroll in hand, he headed off to Training Ground 3. When he arrived, he saw it was just an average training ground, with 3 posts and a memorial stone. The only unique thing he saw was a masked man standing in front of the memorial stone, just staring at it. He cautiously walked up, making sure to make a bit of noise so he didn't spook the man. Scaring a ninja is never a good thing if you value your life. Oi, did you know some of them? Without turning, the man answered. Hi, my teammates and my sensei. That was years ago though. I really shouldn't still beat myself up over it, but I just can't seem to let go. I see. I am sorry for your losses, but you should really think about what they would have wanted. I'm sure there are more productive ways to spend your time than staring at a stone all day. It's obvious you're a ninja, so I would say training more, so that you can protect those still alive. That way you won't have to stare at more names than you already are. The man's eyes grew wide at the simple revelation, and he turned around to see who had given him such advice, only to find no one there. Turning back once more, he glanced at the names again. Is that your way of letting me know it's okay? Fine, I will make you all proud. Obito, Rin, Sensei. A shunshin later, the man was gone, leaving one unnoticed genin shuffling through the brush, tracking a cat. Naruto had easily gained on his target and soon spotted it playing with a flower in a small clearing. Creating some cage bunshin, he set them up in a perimeter before he himself moved in to confront the feline. Hey there Tora, I read that you're a ferocious beast, but you don't look that mean to me. What say we get you back so that you can see your owner again? You must miss her. Tora, being the ferocious beast she was, dove away into the brush only to let out a yell a few seconds later as a bunshin came walking out, cradling the, now purring, Tora as he pet her. Handing her over to the real Naruto, who continued the petting, he dispersed as Naruto turned and left the clearing on his way back to the mission hall. Tora fell asleep halfway there from the attention she was getting. However, she was rather rudely awakened when they got to the mission hall, as she was immediately grabbed and crushed in a tight hug by the daimyo's wife. Naruto instantly pitied it as he walked towards the Chunin again to hand in the mission scroll. Again, without looking up, the Chunin took the scroll and read over the report. Then looked up astonished to see Naruto. You beat the old record. No, shattered, destroyed, obliterated it. How? What are you talking about? Checking to make sure the woman had left, he addressed Naruto again. That cat is the bane of Konoha's genin teams. It runs off so often that it has been somewhat of a competition and standard in skill level. I guess you can't really blame the cat though. I mean, you saw how it's treated. Anyhow, you took less than a half hour to successfully retrieve the thing, beating the old record by over 2 hours. Not to mention doing it solo. Teams have spent days doing this mission before. This one is definitely going in the books. Well, you're dismissed. Excellent job. What? That's it. One mission and I'm off duty. Isn't that a little, light? Naruto asked, a bit confused. It wasn't anywhere near a time that would give him something to do. Namely his dinner with Hinata, provided the girl remembers. Well, I suppose you could take another mission. We don't normally have people complete them quite so quick, and most genin aren't really that eager to do D ranks. I don't think I qualify as most genin. I believe in making the most of what you're given. Right now I have time on my hands, so I might as well do some more missions, right? Sure, I guess. Well, I have fence painting, weeding a garden, cleaning out gutters, helping with a house move, picking apples. He was cut off by Naruto. Just give me 10 or so and I'll be on my way. Slightly confused still, the Chunin picked out 10 various missions and handed them to Naruto. I guess I'll see you in a few days. Naruto just gave him a smirk before walking out the door, making the Chunin slightly unsettled. When he made it outside the mission building, Naruto formed his familiar cross, and in a cloud of smoke there was now a small battalion of Narutos looking back at him. Alright guys, form up in 10 lines. As he waited for the clones to follow his orders, he looked through the scrolls he was given. They were all menial tasks, but he knew he couldn't expect much as a fresh genin. Stealing his resolve, he handed a scroll to the first clone in each line. Okay guys. You have your missions, now go get 'em done. A resounding, yush, was his answer before a blur of blonde, black and green was shooting to their specified destinations around the village. As the clones made their way to their destinations, Naruto took a seat on a nearby bench and pulled out a scroll he had stored earlier. There was no point in wasting time by just sitting there. Over the course of the next few hours, clones reported in and dispersed, allowing him to write mission reports from the memories they gave him. In between reports, he had plenty of time to go through his current scroll on basic kenjutsu forms. He already knew basic kenjutsu, but why not go more in depth? With Kage Bunshin at his disposal, there was no reason to just sit and study as they got the missions done. This way he could earn money to live with and further his skills at the same time. As the last of his clones came in, it was already mid-afternoon and he had picked up a quick lunch between clone reports, so he decided to pack up his belongings and hand in his reports. Entering the mission hall once again, he found the same Chunin sitting there looking just as bored as before, if not more so. Giving a slight cough to alert the man of his presence, he laid the mission scrolls on the table as the other man lifted his head. All finished. You can verify if you like, but if you don't mind, I have things to do this afternoon, so I'll take my leave. Bowing to the man, Naruto walked out of the room to his next destination. Back in the exam room, the Chunin could only stare at the boy's back as he left. Finally realizing what was said, his eyes widened as he picked up the first scroll. Opening it, he checked over the report, scanning the usual lackluster information that could only come from a D rank report. When he got to the end, he found the required signature proving the mission was completed successfully. Not only that, but he found a note stating how well the genin performed the task. Quickly sifting through the rest of the missions, he saw that each one was similar, with many having notes in admiration of the boy's eagerness to do the best job he could. Honestly, he didn't think someone could give a rave review about painting a fence or walking some dogs, but there it was. What he couldn't figure out was how a lone genin could accomplish so much in a week, let alone half a day. Naruto had completed all the missions given in half the time a lone jonin could. Hell, he had seen genin teams with overeager jonin sensei take longer. There was something slightly off here and he couldn't put his finger on it. He would take it up with the Hokage as soon as his replacement came. Speaking of which, the door opened and in walked another Chunin looking a little sheepish. Sorry, I had a little trouble at home, so it took me a little longer than I thought to get here. Don't worry about it. Because you were late, I got to see something extraordinary, so we'll call it even. If you'll excuse me, I need to go see the Hokage about a certain matter from today's missions. With that, he walked out and headed to the Hokage tower. Signing in at the secretary and being given the okay to enter, he found himself in front of the leader of the village. Hokage-sama, I have some information that I believe you would be interested in. It concerns a certain whiskered individual. Waiting for the sign to continue, he took in the man sitting behind the desk. The god of shinobi in his prime, he felt a little ashamed that such a legendary figure was out of his prime and stuck doing paperwork. His thoughts were cut short when Sarutobi turned his head to face the new arrival, showing his attention was now on the Chunin. Sir, one Uzumaki Naruto came in for missions today. I was unaware that we had a one-man cell, so I was a bit skeptical but gave him a D-rank mission anyhow. He completed catching Tora in about 24 minutes, the old record was 2 hours 47 minutes. He completely obliterated it. Sarutobi was shocked. Normally catching a stray pet wouldn't warrant such a reaction, but this was Tora. The cat that many claimed was possessed by a demon. Furthermore, he asked for more missions. There was nothing to say he couldn't do more than the required amount, but when he asked for multiple at once, I reluctantly gave them to him and sent him on his way. I don't have times on each being as he did them back to back, I'm guessing. Regardless, he once again threw reason out the window as he completed them all just a short while before I came here. Normally I would be happy that a team would be willing to do multiple missions, but to do 11 in half a day, not to mention solo. Sir, I don't know how to continue with this. We've never had an issue like this come up. Issue? I don't see any issue here. If anything, it's a blessing. D rank and low C rank missions have been piling up as of late. It would seem some people are getting a bit too comfortable, but there isn't much we can do about that. To have anyone willing to do multiple missions in that range of difficulty is not something we should turn from. Please relay this to the other mission distributors. Uzumaki is to be given as many D rank and any low C ranks that allow him to stay inside the village. If any issues do arise, then you may contact me to sort them out. Otherwise, just keep going as normal. With any luck, he'll do enough to lessen the repeat requests that end up on my desk every day. Dismissed. The Chunin was hesitant, but bowed and left the office, stopping by the mission hall to relay the Sandame's orders to the new man behind the desk, who in turn was equally as dumbstruck. This news would spread to all who worked in the mission hall through word of mouth and later through a posted memo in the hall itself. Though the note didn't show a name, they all would know who it was, as Naruto would be the only one to ask for multiple missions at a time. Heading to his apartment, Naruto went over his day's events in his head. He asked Hinata out to dinner. He had been assigned as a one-man team, and would get to do missions alone unless another team needed some help. He had a couple of morons try to persuade him to their views, one even going so far as to think they had killed him. He talked to Hokage Gigi, and had to describe his actions. Then he took on 11 D-rank missions when all of the other genin wouldn't be doing their first mission for another day at least. Now, after visiting his apartment to shower, change and make a quick stop on the way, he was headed to Ichiraku's to meet Hinata. So far it was a very productive day, and very fulfilling. Turning the last corner, he saw a scene that put him instantly on edge. There in front of Ichiraku's was Hinata with her back to one of the lamp posts and her hands on the chest of someone else who was obviously making unwanted advances. Picking up his pace, he was able to get close enough to stop the male when he made a last push on the frightened Hinata, as her strength was obviously failing. Instead of the boy's mouth clamping on hers, he found it connecting with a fist. Usually kissing a fist wouldn't be that bad of an ordeal, but when said fist was traveling at a heightened speed towards your face, it made for a rather painful experience. One that sent the boy flying back a few yards as he held his now bleeding jaw. I would suggest you not try that again, dog breath. I warned you this morning not to force yourself on anyone, yet you still see fit to try. Even going so far as to try kissing my date while she was waiting for me. Now scamper home before I neuter you. This of course would have worked if someone was known to be strong, but Naruto was known for being on the level of a village idiot, recent actions aside. Kiba knew for a fact that he had beaten Naruto in numerous academy spars, so he chalked today up as luck and surprise. Well, now he no longer had the element of surprise. Hey, you may have gotten a lucky shot off there, but if I beat you down now, then Hinata will have to recognize me as the alpha while you scamper home. So why don't you just submit now and let me have Hinata like you should? I can't let you have Hinata-chan. So you're stupid enough to fight me head on out in the open. You're even dumber than I gave you credit for. By now a small crowd was forming due to Kiba's shouting. They were egging the boy as they told him to teach the demon his place. No, you imbecile. I can't let you have her because she is not mine to give. She is no one's to give. Like I already told you this morning, people are not possessions. That fact obviously didn't get through to you the first time, so I can only hope your limited brain capacity can wrap around it now. Hinata is free to choose who she wants to be with. Whether that is me, you or anyone else is completely up to her. The whole alpha male thing may be how your clan runs things internally, but this is the real world, Scruffy. Out here there are other rules to follow, and if you don't follow them there will be consequences. One such rule is not making unwanted advances on the opposite. No means no, and from what I saw earlier you went far past the point of no. Naruto could see the hate in the other boy's eyes even while his own was showing in the tight clenching of his fists. Out of instinct he slowly moved between Kiba and Hinata, shifting his feet to get a better kick off should the boy decide to try something. He wouldn't have to wait long. Crouching to the ground, Kiba let out a low growl. Akamaru was at home sleeping off his recent cold, but that didn't matter, he wouldn't need help to finish this quick, and it seemed the onlookers agreed. Every few seconds he could hear them saying, "Looks like we get to see the demon bleed again." Or, "Hey, maybe he'll actually cry this time." Kiba's ego was being boosted to new heights as his sensitive ears picked up each remark, though they confused him at the same time. Then without any warning he was off, closing the distance between himself and his target in only a couple seconds. One of his benefits of belonging to a clan like his was that running was no stranger to him. He had to run around his clan's compound multiple times before he even left for the academy in the morning, not that he minded though, it was just Akamaru's morning walk. He was now far too fast for any normal academy graduate to follow, let alone react to. Naruto, however, was no simple fresh off the press academy graduate. Before Kiba was even a foot from his starting point, the blonde had already drawn his ninjutsu for the third time that day. Kiba, having far too much momentum, could only widen his eyes as he saw the blade draw out of its sheath. The crowd's eyes widened as they saw the flash of metal as the blade was drawn. There was no time for them to act as Naruto shifted into a crouch and the hand holding the sword flashed out, then back quicker than anyone could register. Time seemed to slow as Naruto stood up and walked back towards Hinata. He could see the shock in the girl's eyes and knew what she was thinking. "Don't worry, Hinata-chan. I only hit him with the pommel. He just had the wind knocked out of him. He should be able to move again soon enough. Now, let's get going or we're going to be late." Hinata took a glance back at Kiba. She could see the slight shuddering in his shoulders, showing that he was indeed still alive and, by the looks of it, trying to catch his breath as his mouth was open and saliva was starting to drip out. She was brought out of her observations though when her current companion motioned her to follow him. Still a little shocked at the blonde's actions through the day, she found herself in a bit of a daze as she fell into step with him, never realizing they were headed away from their meeting point. As they turned a corner, Kiba was finally able to catch his breath. Glancing around, he found no trace of the dobe or his desired mate anywhere, but what he did see all too well were the shocked and slightly depressed looks of the villagers that had gathered. Why were they depressed? He was the one that got humiliated. It was then that it hit him. He was just soundly beaten by the dead last in the middle of the street. Grinding his teeth, he stomped off towards his clan's compound. He would demand his mom up his training. No dead last was going to beat him. A few notes. There will be some attempted forced violation, but no actual rape will occur with one exception, but that will be much later in Well, you'll see eventually if you keep reading. The main setup for Hiyashi's persona will come around after the wave mission. There will be some interaction with other teams, but not too much. Sorry to disappoint, but Anko will not be in the harem. Don't worry though, she will find someone for herself later. This isn't going to be a massive harem fic, and most of the girls will be brought in before the time skip. As for updating, I'll be aiming for once or twice a week. Also, on Naruto's strength, I plan for an excuse for that not QB, but that won't come in until after the time skip. Will he get help? Yes, but again not for a while. Anyhow, I don't want to give away too much, so enjoy chapter 3. As Naruto walked down the hall to his little retreat, he once again found himself recalling the afternoon's events. Aside from the event with Kiba outside of Ichiraku's, the day went great. Hinata was slightly surprised that Naruto had taken her to an actual restaurant, and though they were a little underdressed for the place, it didn't really matter. After all, this was a ninja village, so while it was rare to see people dress as ninja in such a restaurant, it wasn't unheard of. Thankfully, it had been a newer place that had little to no knowledge of his reputation. They got a seat in a booth that was out of sight of most of the floor, and Naruto took the seat that was the least visible. It wasn't that he was embarrassed to be seen on a date, quite the opposite, but he didn't want to subject Hinata to the discrimination that he was so used to getting. The meal was perfect and they ate in silence. Hinata showed her well-practiced manners while she ate with grace and perfection. Naruto showed that he was capable of at least above-average table etiquette, slightly surprising Hinata as thoughts of him eating with her and her family became more of a possibility. Well, at least a little more than just a dream anyhow. After dinner, which he paid for after letting her know that he had already taken on some missions so he had a little money to spend, they went through a walk through the darkening streets of Konoha. He was sure to keep an eye out for unfavorable reactions as they went so he could avoid confrontations if possible. His actions proved unnecessary though, as he only saw some glares but no hostile actions. At least for now. Most likely they would wait until he didn't have a member of such a prestigious clan with him. That was fine though. He was an official ninja now, and there were more laws that came into the light once he officially graduated. Specifically ones that kept villagers from attacking shinobi. Which meant he could retaliate and, while it wouldn't allow him to kill them, he was allowed to detain them and turn them in. Sure, it wouldn't mean much right away, but eventually they would come to realize that there were now consequences. He wasn't stupid enough to expect more than a night in custody at most, but anything was better than the nod of approval they got from the civilian council as they did in the past. Opening the door to his own personal vault, he saw his clones still hard at work. He was pleased to notice that the ones he gave reading material to, now were looking through more scrolls than what he had given them. One close by was just finishing a scroll on one-handed seals. Before it got up to grab another scroll, Naruto had it dispel. The effect was not immediate as he had believed it would be, but the knowledge did come. Not only that, but it seemed it spread to the other clones as well when he noticed some of the clones practicing jutsu were incorporating the one-handed seals in their training as the knowledge came. Smiling at the progress, he began dispelling clones as they finished up their current projects, getting a slight headache when he dispelled multiple clones at once. After soaking up their knowledge, he practiced a few of the jutsu himself using both one- and two-handed seals. He soon found that two-handed seals gave a little more power to any jutsu that he chose, but could easily see where one-handed seals could be useful should one of his hands be injured or occupied, say by his sword. Oddly enough, the scroll that had listed the one-handed seals was the only one he'd found, and it had still been in the packaging. He wasn't sure why someone would toss out something so useful, but he wasn't about to complain. He did a few more tests to see just how many of his theories on clone usage worked. Knowledge was an obvious gain as he was steadily gaining the experiences of his clones. He learned that earlier as they were dispelling after completing their missions. A few kunai tosses didn't really produce much, but that wasn't all his clones had practiced throwing, so setting the kunai aside he pulled out one of his less proficient weapons, a hand axe. It wasn't really a ninja weapon, especially this one which had a previous life as a wood-chopping hatchet. He made a new handle for it though, and it was at least passable for its former job. Now though he was using it for throwing practice. Drawing his arm back he threw the axe at one of his targets, hitting it a bit low and to the right. Not enough to be considered accurate, but after a few more throws he found he was consistent. Definitely more so than he had beyond previous attempts, as the gouges in the floor and wall could attest to. Next he did a quick lap around the ceiling to check his control. Again, like the kunai practice, there wasn't much to see, but he would keep it up regardless, as it couldn't hurt and may show its results over time. After all, it isn't like his chakra control was horrid, and there is only so far you can improve before it is no longer in leaps and bounds. His last remaining test was reaction. He already had a fast reaction time as it was. This was born from many years of trying to avoid being beaten and stabbed. It was a required trait to have, as many times it was drunks that assaulted him. With their inebriated senses, their aim was often very poor. As such, he would have to maneuver himself to make their weapons hit non-vital areas. However, it never hurt to make even one's best skills even better, so he made a clone and had it start throwing some rubber balls at him, which he tried his best to avoid. He had never really had anyone to practice this with, and had he suddenly started dodging things the villagers threw at him before he had extra backing, it would have made things worse for him over time. Now though, he would use this dodging practice as a starting point and judge over the next few weeks on whether or not his reflexes are getting better. After a half hour of dodging the balls thrown at random speeds in inconsistent patterns, he had a general idea of his abilities there. While far from superhuman, they were at least good enough that he could make several clones and have them practice with more dangerous objects. Dismissing the clone, he set out some new materials for when he set up his clones tomorrow before heading to his apartment for a full night of rest. Yes, only rest. Another trait that he'd acquired over the years. After numerous break-ins at his apartment, he was able to go into a sleep-like state while keeping his senses alert. This allowed him to hear when something was happening near him and take appropriate action. If a gas bomb was thrown through his window, he could hold his breath and turn on the fan in his room to disperse the gas before it could do any harm. If someone broke in his door, he could hide or leave before they got to his bedroom. Sure, they would tear apart his place and set up traps, but that just gave him more supplies to work with normally. In most cases, he would just sell the trap parts and use the money he got for them to replace anything that had been destroyed beyond repair. Since he didn't keep much in his apartment, he never really had to replace much, though it would still cost him quite a lot. Taking up a meditative position in the center of his bed, he slowly drifted off into semi-consciousness as he waited for a new day to come. Across the village, in a compound far too large for one person, sat a lone boy in a dead house on a vacant street. Uchiha Sasuke was fuming at what the dead last did to him this morning in the classroom. Not only had he taken his rightful attention away and ignored him, the boy also had the nerve to think he could outwit and defeat an Uchiha. Torture would be too kind for someone with such gall. No, he would be sure that something much worse was brought upon the insignificant worm that humiliated him today. No one humiliates an Uchiha and gets away with it, no one. Finishing his meal, he went out to his training area and threw himself at the posts once again. It was the only thing he had to do anyway around here, but this night he seemed to have a renewed vigor. He wasn't going to chance having a weak moment ever again. No, the Dobi would not catch him off guard when next they met, he would make sure of that. The only desire he had was to awaken his Sharingan. Having that would ensure his victory over the blonde. Now all he had to do was pass some stupid test tomorrow. He hoped it would be a skills test so he wouldn't need to worry about his teammates. Hell, why did he even have a team anyway? The Dobi didn't have one yet. He, an Uchiha, was given a team and a sensei. At least he could agree with his sensei though. The famed Hatake Kakashi, the copy ninja, a man said to know over 1,000 jutsu. Yes, This man could help him go far. Dreaming of throwing high-rank jutsu at his helpless brother was more than satisfying. Sure, it was all in his head, but it made him feel a little better at the time watching his imaginary battle with his brother while his brother begged for mercy and he gave the man none. It was these dreams that allowed him to fall asleep with an evil smile on his face. In another section of Konoha, another boy was seething. Inuzuka Kiba sat at his family's diner table with bloodlust in his eyes. Not only did the dead last have the nerve to hurt him in front of the whole class, but he also took a girl that should only belong to the alpha male,